All right, guys. So Marx with an X, Lamont Hill, our favorite pseudo academic, is back at it again. Okay, I got to make another video about him because he did this interview debate with Miss Liz Wheeler, who did a wonderful job of holding her own against him when talking about critical race theory. It is obvious that she came very, very, very prepared to debate Marc Lamont Hill in the same way that if I was to, have a conversation with him about this, I would say the same things, in which I would say that, hey, you guys can sit here and play the semantics game and act like what you're saying is not an outcome or a outgrowth of critical race theory, but we all know it is, right? And that's essentially the angle that she came from in the argument, and I think that's the right angle. And to be quite honest with you, Marc Lamont Hill really didn't have anything for that outside of the typical denying that, well, it's not critical race theory. It's not critical race theory, when she obviously came, again, prepared and knew what she was talking about. He also claimed that it wasn't Marxism either when, again, if you just look up critical race theory, we all know that it is an extension. It comes from Marxism, right? But the only difference really is that instead of looking at the struggle between classes, it looks at the struggle between races. Okay, that's what it does. Again, this is like basic stuff, and he's just denying it. But the point of this video really is not about critical race theory. It's really about Marc Lamont Hill making this interesting comment in which Liz Wheeler kind of turned back around things that he likes to do to other people, which is to ask gotcha questions. And she kind of asked him a gotcha question when she asked him, does he believe that all white people are racist? So let's take a look at this clip, and then I'm gonna give you guys my commentary.
Sure. So I think it's important, again, not to talk in generalizations and not to be vague here, to give specific examples so that nothing is misunderstood. So let's talk about a tenet of critical race theory that's being taught right now in an Evanston school district in the state of Illinois. It's a book called Not My Idea, a book about whiteness. And in this book, white people are portrayed as the devil actually tempting children with so-called whiteness. And it's obviously racist. It's portraying everyone who has a certain color of skin as being the devil. This book is not only taught to kindergartners, by the way, in the state of Illinois, it's taught to 4th and 5th graders in the state of Pennsylvania. And Mark, honestly, it doesn't matter what you want to call this. You can call it critical race theory because it's the outgrowth of critical race theory. You can call it racialism because it's a tool to implement Marxism, or you can call it abject racism, which is exactly what it is. That's what parents don't want in our country. And this is my question. Do you think that that's appropriate to teach in American schools?
I mean, that's a wonderful question.
Do you think that's appropriate to teach in schools?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's appropriate to teach in schools, nor do I think it's appropriate to just call it critical race theory. And even you yourself are implicitly conceding that point. You're saying, well, you can call it critical race theory, you can call it racialism. I could call it a hand mirror, but it doesn't make it one, right? So just because we throw labels on things doesn't make it that thing. It would be like if I went to every KKK rally and said, you know what?
Let me explain. Let me explain.
That's Republican doctrinism. That's MAGA. That's this. You would be very frustrated with that, and you would say that it's an inaccurate assessment. That book, that tradition that you talk about has absolutely no root.
In this case, that's not a good analogy, because critical theory, so going back to critical theory teaches that there's no objective truth, right? That there's just competing narratives. And they teach that the worker class isn't going to rise up against the elite class to overthrow the government, to implement Marxism. Listen to what I'm saying. This is an important point that I'm making. This is an important point that I'm making. If you want to have a productive conversation, I think you're going to be interested in this.
I am interested in it, but what I'm asking you is,
Herbert Marcuse identified racial minorities in America. Herbert Marcuse, a critical race theory scholar, as you know, identified racial minorities in the United States
is not a critical race scholar.
The vanguard, the new vanguard, the new worker, to usher in a Marxist revolution. To do this, you have to use this racialism, use this racial divide as a tool to paint all white people as inherently racist. Do you believe that? Do you believe all white people are inherently racist?
So I don't know if you're backing me into a corner with that question, but yes, I do. I do believe that all white people are at some level, at the unconscious level, connected to racism. It's unavoidable. I think all men are sexist at some level. I think that is absolutely the case. But you said that Herbert Marcuse was a critical race theorist. That's simply untrue. That's ahistorical and inaccurate. Anyway, I got to go. I'll have you back, I promise. I got to take a commercial.
All right, guys. So You notice how he said that it would be wrong, right? Or that the right would get upset if they characterize all of, white supremacists or KKK people as Trump supporters, right? Or Republicans or whatever. First of all, the left does do that, right? They do that. They do say that everybody that's a so-called white supremacist or a part of KKK, they do associate them with Trump supporters, okay? Or they call Trump supporters all white supremacists, right? They already do that. And then he follows that up and proceeds to say that not only does he believe that all white people are racist, right, to a certain degree, he also says that he believes that all men are sexist, right? That's what he says. Now, guys, imagine if a white person said that they believe that all black people are thugs and criminals, right? Imagine how outraged this man would be. Okay, imagine if somebody came on the show and started stereotyping black people and making broad generalizations like that. But see, Marc Lamont Hill can get away with that because he's experiencing what we call black privilege, right? The ability to say what you want, things that everybody else would see as racist, but there's no consequences for it, right? There's never any backlash for the things that this man says. But the point of this video is to explain to you guys why Marc Lamont Hill thinks this way, because I do believe that he agrees particularly with this left-wing, far-left academic research that has led people to conclude that all white people are unconsciously racist, right? AKA implicit bias studies is where this stuff comes from. Now, that's something I want to talk about because a lot of people complain about the things that Marc Lamont Hill says, but people don't explain why he believes that. Why does he actually believe that? Where does this come from? Now, before I really get into the details, I want to give a little story about the first time I actually ever heard of this. Okay, I was actually in college, and I was in this debate with two of my friends. Well, I wouldn't say they're friends anymore. These were two girls whom were studying gender studies, right? They were studying gender studies, right? And one of the girls who was white, she said that she's racist. She called herself racist, right? And I said, wait, what do you mean by you're racist? Why are you calling yourself racist? Because I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, okay, I know you slept with one of my friends who happens to be black, so you can't be all that racist unless you're into some type of fetishes or something like that. But so I'm confused. What does she mean by she is racist? So this person, she says, I'm unconsciously racist. I don't know I'm racist. I did not know that I was racist until I started taking these classes, right, in the whole gender studies field and the sociology field that revealed to me that I'm racist, right? And this is what she said. And she says that I have to consciously control and understand my racism because I am a racist, right? And that really blew my mind, guys. It blew my mind. That's the first time I heard that, right? It's also the first time that I heard about gender theory as well, which is the idea that gender roles are a social construction, okay? Which I vehemently disagree with, because even if some aspects of gender, right, specifically how we dress, even if that is social, a lot of gender roles are biological in nature, right? They come from biology, right? The social roles extend from biology, okay? That would be my argument against that. But back to this far left idea of all white people being racist. And like I said, this comes from the science, right? Science of implicit bias, okay? Which is the idea that people are implicitly biased against other people, right? And this unconscious / implicit bias can be based off a number of factors, not just race, but it can be socioeconomic status, it could be gender, it could be age, location, it can be all types of things, okay? And this has basically become a multi-million-dollar consulting industry, right? Coming out of academia. Politicians have embraced it, big corporate America has embraced it. A lot of people have embraced this. An implicit bias theory burst into the scene in the late 90s with the implicit association test. Now, this test is basically used to test somebody's bias against other people and different groups of people. And there is a race version of this test. Again, there are other versions of the test that's based off everything from gender to weight, okay? But there is a race version of this test, right? So, for example, they would try to test how people associate bad things or good things with black versus white faces, right? And the conclusions of this study, right, the so-called biases that they observed, they tried to extrapolate that to the real world to try to say that, well, this explains racial disparities. And I think that that's an issue. And I believe this for a few reasons, right? One, these test scores vary, or they can vary each time somebody takes the test. And this can be significant, okay? Two, on top of that, I don't think these test scores have any connection to what this implicit aptitude test counts as so-called discriminatory behavior, which, for example, could be things like, you know, body language on an interview, or your choice whether or not you want to donate to poor kids in South Africa versus poor kids in Colombia. We haven't really tested how these test scores actually have a connection to the real world. And even the original pioneers of this test, Anthony Greenwald and Marzin Banji, even said themselves that the psychometric problems associated with this test make it problematic to classify a person as likely to engage in discriminatory behavior, right? They wrote this back in 2016. However, the woke revolutionaries on the left kind of ran with this and came up with kind of different ways of testing, implicit bias. And I think that ultimately there's some problems with extrapolating that, right? Extrapolating a test to the real world. But that's a deeper conversation that I really want to get into. So I'm just saying that to explain to you guys why Marc believes what he believes. Okay, that's what it comes from. It's the idea that white people are implicitly biased against other groups of people. And you combine that with the idea that white people have power, right? Or they're the most powerful in society. That's where you get the idea that all white people are racist. That's where he gets that from. Okay? Because the left has defined racism as a power structure. That's the way they've defined it. Okay? That's why they believe that black people can't be racist. Okay? Even though black people have implicit biases, right? So if you want to say white people have implicit biases, right? Black people also have the same thing. But see, the problem is that the left, anytime they talk about black people having implicit biases, they never talk about the negative implicit biases that black people have towards white people. They always want to frame it as, well, they have implicit biases, but it's just towards other black people. Okay? That's the way they want to frame it. Because then it presents a problem, because at that point, if you take away the definition of racism that the left has hijacked, then everybody's racist, right? But see, that's not good. Marc Lamont Hill can't say that, right? He can't say that. He can't say that everybody's racist. And this is what the left has done with these word games, where they have redefined the definitions of words to fit the narrative of having an excuse to restructure society through the demonization of white people and what they call a white society, right? And they also imply this type of stuff to men, right? This is why they say they want to take down the patriarchy. They say that, oh, well, men have implicit biases against women, and because men have power, right? Yeah, that power thing is there. Oh, they're sexist. Okay, they're sexist. But they don't talk about how women could also have implicit biases towards men, right? They don't talk about the reverse. Okay? And the reason why they don't talk about the reverse is because, again, it doesn't fit the narrative. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it really is about power. It's about restructuring society so that a certain group of people has more power over another group of people. Ultimately, that's what it's about. Okay, and I just wanted to explain that because I feel like a lot of people talk about the things that the left says, but they don't really understand why the left believes what they believe or where it actually comes from. But with that being said, me personally, I think that if you buy into the fact that people have implicit biases, which I think is reasonable that people do to a certain extent, like it's unconscious, right? I think that applies to everybody, right? Period. Point blank, period. That's not just one thing that applies to one group of people. It's not. And I think that that's the main issue when people are having these arguments, is that and the fact that they have redefined racism as a power structure to focus on white people instead of focusing on the fact that, okay, well, if people have implicit biases, then we just need to focus on making society a colorless society, right? Where we strive for equal opportunity versus anti-racism and equity, which is what they want, right? That's my opinion. Okay, I would rather take the colorblind approach, because at that point you're trying to overcome whatever implicit biases somebody may have, okay, regardless of, race, color, whatever, okay, and you're striving for people to have that opportunity regardless of that, right? Regardless of what effect that may or may not have on the real world, or how it may or may not explain racial disparities, okay? Because we really don't know. That it's just a theory. There are always going to be disparities. And I think that it is flawed to believe that we should actually even get rid of disparities, because everybody is different, right, to a certain extent. And we also live in a capitalistic society. There will be disparities. However, I think that we must ensure that we have a system and laws in place that do allow for equal opportunity, right, to overcome whatever disparities may exist, okay, where you have the opportunity to do that. That's my ideal approach. And furthermore, when it comes to this idea of racism being a power structure, I don't define racism as a power structure, because I don't believe that anybody is more powerful than me regardless of their skin color, okay? I personally define racism as discrimination against somebody solely based off their race or skin color, right? Or having hateful thoughts about people solely based off their race or skin color. Now, can some of that be overt? Can some of that be implicit? Sure. But like I said, I think that we need a system and laws in place to overcome whatever implicit bias may or may not be there. But with that being said, I think that we're closer to that today than we've ever been at any point in history. I think that we're damn near there. I think we're there. So I just wanted to comment on that, because I want to explain where Marc kind of gets this idea from, right? Why do leftists say this? Why they believe this? This is where it comes from. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.